Hey, Jimbo, you ready for this deal?
Turn him out.
Old stories like long lost friends, rodeos and late night bends, history before our time, round pens and pasture rides, cowboys of the Osage.
Howdy, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Cowboys of the Osage podcast, brought to you by the Ben Johnson Cowboy Museum and the Buck and Flamingo Turquoise Store, both located right here in historic downtown Pawhuska, Oklahoma. Hey, it's old Cody over here, and as always, I have my main man with me, Mr. Songwriter himself, Mr. Rodeo Historian himself, Jimbo Snively. Good morning, Jimbo. Good to see you. Who we talking to today?
Hey, Cody boy, it's another great day in the Osage, and that Buck and Flamingo, that's the place. Now, I try to keep my wife out of there. They've got the biggest selection of turquoise jewelry in Oklahoma, as you well know, but a good place to come visit.
Yeah, if you like the podcast, be sure and call and buy your wife something for Christmas there.
Right. Cody, we got a great cowboy with us today, Rope Myers. He was 1991 college national finals rodeo champion. He was the 1992 Resistol Rookie of the Year. He's in the Texas Hall of Fame. He a 9 times NFR Bulldogger. He won the World's Championship in 2001. He won a gold medal in I don't think we've ever had a gold medal winner on here before, have we?
Not that I know of, Jimbo.
Yeah, that's pretty rare company there. He won the gold medal in 2002. He's from the famous Myers roping family, or rodeo family. His dad, Butch, was a world champion bulldogger. His brother, Cash, still going strong, was an NFR bulldogger, calf roper. His sister, Ty, was a great cowgirl. And also, people might have heard of one of their cousins, Ty Murray. So a very historic family, for sure. And Rope, we're just tickled to death to have you on with us today. Welcome to the Cowboys of the Osage podcast.
Well, I'm glad to be a part of it. Glad to see other people out there sharing the love of rodeo and horse, being a cowboy and just being out there in this lifestyle. So I'm glad to be a part of it.
Well, we're tickled to have you. Where'd you grow up at, Rope?
Well, I was born in Colorado. I was raised in eastern Kansas, though. I was raised not too far from Pawhuska, in a little town called Welda, Kansas. We had the Rope and Tie for Cash Arena, and we had rodeos and jackpots and stuff all up there all the time I was growing up. But I went to college in Texas. I've been here ever since.
Did your dad teach you how to bulldog, I guess?
Yeah. My dad started steer wrestling clinics in 1969, and we've had 2 steer wrestling clinics a year every year since 1969. Eastern Thanksgiving every year. Like I say, we've never missed a year that entire time. And I grew up as a little kid pushing cattle and tailing the steers and running the machines and doing that, but long before I was able and big enough to run a real steer. So it's been fun to be able to do that, grow up doing it, and continue to do it as my profession.
Did you do much roping? Rope?
Oh yes, sir. I grew up roping. I roped before I could walk. And all of us kids did. My rookie year, I actually won I missed the finals in the steer wrestling my rookie year by $287. But that same year, I won as much in the tie-down roping as I did in the steer wrestling. A couple of injuries along the way that kind of made roping a little, let me continue. I broke my wrist, or broke my navicular bone in my right hand. The same year I made the finals for the first time, and I could still steer wrestle, but kind of put my cap up and behind schedule a little bit. So
Your dad, he isn't the biggest guy in the world. He came up with his own technique of bulldogging, but you're a lot bigger than the rest of your family, it looks like. Did you kind of combine his technique with a bigger, stronger guy's technique all at the same?
sure, I mean, I'm in steer wrestling anymore. I mean, heck, everybody's. I'm just average size, but yeah, my dad was 5'11" and 200 pounds. So he was a little lighter and a little smaller than some of the other guys, and really, it came through those clinics as much as anything else. He was. I really do feel like he was an innovator in the sport. I mean, I always feel like that. What he did is he did a great job of, well, first of all, just being honest and saying, okay, what really does work, and then secondly, just combining what those things were working from all these other guys and putting it together into a cohesive and overall form that works for everybody. When my mom we were growing up, I mean, I'm this old, so she had the old video camera that had the big pack on her hip, and she'd have that thing over her shoulder, and she would video the old VHS tapes, just hundreds and hundreds of runs at all those flacks, where my dad was rodeoing and competing. And Dad would go home and he would watch those runs, and he'd watch them over and over and over and over again. And, that old kind of squiggly rewind and start over and rewind and go again. And just came up with, that between that and the schools, teaching something that the way it's been taught forever, and then realizing it's not really working for these guys. So how do we change how we're instructing, how we're teaching it, what's actually happening in the steer wrestling run? And that is between those two things, he really was able to create a style and a form that works for, anybody that tries. We have a saying, it says every time it's tried, and then all our students say it works. And the point of it is not that it's our style. It's just what actually works with the mechanics and the physiology of the steer.
What is it exactly, Rope, just in a kind of a broad sense?
Sure. In a layman's perspective, yeah. I'd say that the point of it is that, I mean, one of the fundamental things that we start with is that steers are stronger, faster, more agile, and we say better looking than most bulldoggers. So, we're going to use the steer's strength, speed, and agility against himself. And we do that by getting his head out from in line with his body when we first catch him, and then allowing him to just follow his head with some speed. Another tenet is that it's true in everything, but in your truck, 6-speed has lots more speed and a lot less power. And first speed has a lot more power and a lot less speed. So we want to keep the speed up and which allows us to keep the power down in the steer. So we don't try to slow the steer down. We try to let him come past us with speed. It makes it a little more difficult to do, but it removes the factor of their power. And then secondly, after all, this is a timed event competition. We want to do it as fast as possible.
Right. Besides your dad, who were some of the guys that you looked up to as a kid growing up?
Well, I was fortunate enough to be around just an incredible amount of really talented guys and grew up around them, got to watch them compete, got to watch them steer wrestle. I loved watching Todd Fox bulldog and practicing with him. I feel like he was, I learned a lot from him, both just how to compete, but also just how to win. And so, he's one of the guys. I mean, I love Roy Duval. I mean, being an Oklahoma guy, I mean, he's a good fella that, kind of was a pioneer in our sport. So, I got to watch a lot of those guys, and I got to watch my dad, take a little bit from each one of those guys and kind of add it to what we do.
Todd Fox, I don't think he ever won a world championship, did he?
No, he didn't.
I was always a huge fan of his, though. I mean, growing up, I always took notice of him.
He came close a lot of several times, and really quit when he was still in his prime. I mean, just kind of went back to what he has a pretty big real estate business down there in his part of the world, down around Marble Falls still, and so he just kind of went back and decided to do that.
Yeah, he was a gritty bulldogger,
right,
Jimbo.
Yeah.
I think I saw him in the matches at the Windy Ryan a couple times. Man, it was just such good watching Todd Fox bulldog.
Yes, sir.
Did you ever match anybody there at the Windy Ryan? Oh, yeah, you did. I remember he matched old Joe Walker there one time.
Yeah, I did.
And it was a muddy booger.
Yeah,
Holy moly.
I won 2 matches there, and my third attempt I really should have won that one too, but I caught a steer, and my hazer was a little bit late. It was my dad. I hate to say that, but it was. But I still caught him. But when I went down, the steer went down. I caught him, and he sheared his right horn off, and I couldn't keep hold of him. He got loose, and ended up getting beat by Teddy Johnson. So, but anyway, I got a match there a few times. I wish I could have matched there more times. I enjoyed doing that.
You matched Teddy Johnson and Joe Walker, and who else?
I matched. I think it's Byron. I matched the first time. I can't remember. I've matched a bunch of guys over the years. I love matching. Way back in the day, we used to go to all the Duvals and Huddlestons, and when I was still in high school and college, I'd have a match every year. We had a lot of matches over the years. I liked matching. I liked the old battle royal they used to have at Duval's. That was one of my favorite things to do. I've won that twice. Should have won it 2 more times, but that was always fun. 10 guys, and I used to get the 10. I mean, they used to have the 10 best guys. Some of the 10 best guys in the world there in that match. And you run the same 10 steers, and everybody runs the same 10 steers. You run 5, and then they run the junior bulldog, and then you run 5 more. And anyway, that was always my favorite. One of my favorite things to do that we got to do. I got to do it several times. So.
Did you approach the match bulldogging a little different than you would at a rodeo rope, or was it just all the same?
Well, you know what? I always had this. I mean, steer wrestling's too difficult to add anything or take anything away from it. So you just go at every single steer the same way you go at everything else. You go at him to make the very best run you can on that steer. You take the same start you take any other time, and you don't be safe or anything else. You have to run bulldog on the edge, the knife edge of it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And like I said, I won that thing twice, and the only 2 times. One time. So the first time I didn't win it. Actually Herbert Terrio won it. Brad Gleason was winning it. We was in about the 7th, or I think it was the 7th. Through the 7th round, I was in second behind Brad Gleason, but he was about 3 seconds up on me. And this is as an example of what you're saying there. I pushed just a little bit. I'm like going, I gotta do something to catch him. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I took a bit of a chance. Took a bit of a chance on the start, and I broke that barrier. And then that was in the 8th round. And then he runs about 3 guys after me, and he messes one up completely. And end up being Herbert Terrio comes back and wins it. It was a great opportunity for me to learn. Like that was when I think I just barely made 1 finals at that time is all I had. But it was a great place for me to learn. I learned that lesson on that steer. I was like going, no, you can't add anything or try to do anything different, but just run the steer you've got the best you can. If it works out, it works out. And so anyway, that taught me that lesson because Herbert didn't do anything special. He just let us come catch him from the front. So
yeah, it works out that way sometimes.
Yes, sir. The other time, now I'll tell you the third time I should have won it. I just I got screwed that time. Well, what happened was I threw a steer. There was a steer that would always fall the wrong way. And there's a thing you can do if the steer falls the wrong way. You can roll his head out, and then you're supposed to get a flag when he's flat. It doesn't matter which side he's on, as long as he's flat with all 4 feet set in the same direction. They stop the time. And Butch Kirby was, I'm not saying he did it he certainly didn't do it on purpose, but just as the judge, you should know the rules. Well, anyway, the steer fell on the wrong side, and he got confused and held the flag and then rode all the way around and then realized he was supposed to drop the flag, and everybody's hollering at him. He dropped the flag, and I was like 10-6 on that steer, and ended up, I won second that year by 2 seconds, and I should have been, 5 or 6 seconds on that steer. So, but anyway, that was one of my favorite things to do, coming through is the Battle Royal was, of course they don't do it like that anymore, but that was pretty awesome way to compete.
Yeah, that was always a famous big steer wrestling down there, Jimbo. I remember everyone used to talk about that 10-man. Everyone put up 1,000 winner take all they had there.
Yeah.
They said they used to bulldog all the way into the night there and start having pretty wild matches, like running their horses bareback or running barefoot matches or stuff like that.
All kinds. And arm wrestling and foot races and Indian leg wrestling. I mean, you just didn't. Eventually, it just kind of the wheels would come completely off. But it was back in the day. It was quite an adventure. And a lot of guys gambling on the side, and everybody playing over and under for at least $1 on nearly every steer that's run. And it was quite an atmosphere. It's still a decent steer wrestling, but wasn't like it was back then.
Over and under is a game that you play, Jimbo, and I know you probably know what it is. I'm just telling everybody else what it is. It's a game, I guess there'd be two guys sitting there, and you rotate back and forth, and one guy says a time, and you say over or under, and then the loser's got to pay, then you go back and forth. And I've seen them play at San Angelo for $100 a run at the Steer Open.
Oh, yeah.
Over and under.
And sometimes there'll be groups of, 8 or 10 of you, so, if you set it, everybody goes over, and you're paying all of those guys. It can get expensive in a hurry.
Oh yeah, well, holy moly, yeah. I didn't play with a big bunch of guys. I've only played with 1 or 2 guys, so that would get pretty darn expensive.
Yeah, if you ever set it and they all get on one side of you, you either win a bunch or lose a bunch in a hurry.
Did you go to a bunch of rodeos with your dad growing up, or they make you stick around the house?
No, we went a lot. My dad was always wanted his family around him. He took us a lot. And, everybody always asked, did Dad make you be a cowboy? And I'm like, no, but I mean, every little kid dreams of being a cowboy. I just got to do it with real horses and steers. So.
He was a pretty good all-around hand, too, in his younger days, wasn't he?
He made the NFR and the calf roping and the steer wrestling. And he's, back in the day, he was quite a bareback rider. There's a lot of those stock contractors in the IRA and and stuff would tell you that he was hard to throw off.
What was your favorite rodeo to go to with him every year?
That's a tough question. Way back then, we used to go to Pontiac Silverdome up in Michigan, which is kind of a crazy place to have a rodeo, but that back then in the Silverdome, it had that roof that was like inflated with air, and so when I was little, that was an IRA rodeo. That was one of my favorites. And then later it became Houston. We used to go to the slack at Houston, and we knew all the tricks about Houston. We knew how to get up in the parts of the that nobody else could get into. We got into like the suites and everything. All of us little kids that were kids of the different all the different people that were there competing in the slack. There was always a good 15, 20 of us rugrats running around, and had a ropes and everything else, and we would sneak in. We had a way to get into the top of the old Astrodome, and that was always kind of fun. So.
Yeah, we used to do that with the Lazy Arena, go find all the little secret areas. It was fun.
Yeah.
Growing up.
You made you were the Resist All Rookie of the Year in '92, but you didn't make the finals until '95. I guess you have to pay your dues, right?
Well, in '92, I missed the finals by $287. You remember numbers like that,
right?
And then in '93, I was in the top 15, and I tore my ACL at Auburn, California. And then, so I healed up in 93, and then 94 I came back, and I was 16th in the world again. I missed the finals again by one spot. So, you know, I guess that's how it goes sometimes. And in 95, of course, I ended up runner-up for the world title that year. So.
What was it like, that first finals? And by the way, your dad made that finals too, didn't he? 95.
Yeah, he made it in 95. We got to go to the same finals in 95 and in 97.
That's
95 was the most unusual finals I've ever been a part of. It was the last time they had steers like that at the NFR. They were not great. There were some pretty rank steers. I mean, there's a kind of a famous run of mine where I caught the steer about halfway, and he doesn't. I mean, at this time I'm 220 pounds, and he does not let me put my feet on the ground. My feet do not touch the ground all the way to the back end, and then I push off the back end with my feet. The back fence, I push off the back fence with my feet, still haven't touched the ground. I used that back fence to turn him, and then I was able to throw it down. But that year at the finals, my first year, the very first year I ran at the NFR, I got a little too aggressive and kicked a little far, and the steer stopped. It kind of wasn't supposed to stop, and I missed him. I double jumped him and threw him down, but I was just about a second and a half over the time limit when I got him to fall. And if I'd have thrown him, if I could have been 59.9 under the 60-second time limit, I would have won the world that year. But if ifs and buts was candy and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. But the good news is but that was kind of it was a good learning opportunity for me. I still won a lot of money at that finals. I worked my way even though I was no time on my first year, worked my way all the way back up to get an average check, and it was a good beginning.
I'm guessing that was the only time that a father and sons ever competed in the bulldogging together at the finals. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, there's been, I'm not, other than team rope, but I don't think there's ever been another event where, father and son competed at the same NFR. So.
Right. I think you're right, because that's pretty rare for a father in those type of events, for a father and son to compete. And you did it twice, 95, 97. What was that like competing with I guess you shared the same horse and everything?
Well, actually, we didn't. We didn't ride the same horse. We did after we just didn't like the same horses. I like a different kind of horse. You know what I'm saying? I like the taller, stronger horse. He liked the little shorter horse. Part of it is our size and those kind of things. But yeah, we rode different horses. But it was something else. There was in '97. One of the things that led to me probably ended up. So there's kind of a cool thing, when the finals first came out and went to Vegas in 1985, my dad set the record that first year was in Vegas for the average on 10 head at Vegas. Then that record was still in place in 97. In 1997, I win the first round of NFR that year. I was 3-3 or 3-4. It's pretty fast. And they asked me at the gold buckle ceremony. Used to be anyway at the Gold Coast, and and they asked me, "Hey, are you going to try to break your dad's record?" And that year in '97, I said, I just don't think that record's ever going to be broken, is what I said out loud. But then this thought went in the back of my head: is that true? Is that real? Is that true? And it was kind of interesting because then Dad ended up breaking his own record that year at the NFR in '97. He broke his old record, and so now that was the new set. The new set was like 43.5 or something like that. And then that record stayed in place until the year 2000, when I think it was Mickey G broke that record and set a new record of 42 something on 10 head. and then in 2001, but partly because the seeds were sown there in 1997, I broke the record at the NFR, and it still stands, and that record's 37.4 seconds on 10 head.
Wow.
But that year, because of what happened that year with Dad breaking his own record, was really probably, you can't do something until you believe you can do it. And that was kind of where the seeds of that belief were sown. I realized that was, when I knew that I could be able to do that.
About how old would your dad have been in 97?
He was 52 in 97.
That's pretty impressive to break the NFR record at that age. Wow.
Absolutely.
In a young man's sport,
Mm-hmm.
Pretty impressive. Well, the year you won it, you went in, I believe I read it's number 14. Is that right?
Correct. Yes, sir. That was quite a year. It was really such a God year for us. As a kingdom man, I've been walking it out with the Father for a long time by that point, and I really felt like early in that year that the Father made it really clear that I wasn't going to rodeo in 2002. That 2001 was going to be my last year, and I was good with that. I felt really confident that was what the Father wanted me to do, and so I was prepared to do that. Matter of fact, I was ready to do that. I kind of wanted to do it before that, and anyway, that year went along, and I cannot tell you how bad that entire year went. 2001. It went so bad. So one little kind of a story from it was this: we were at we had went to there's a group of us guys that all believers that got to go to Angola prison and put on an exhibition rodeo for the prisoners and share the gospel with them. And when we were down there, of course, you're going to go put on a prison or go put on a rodeo for 1,000 prisoners. You kind of want to look good doing it. So Stay Smith cattle. He said, yeah, you could take some steers down there. So I picked 2 just lollipops to go down there to that road to put on that rodeo. And so the steer that I run down there in the prison, over the 4th of July at Winter Rock, Arizona, it's gone terrible. I haven't won hardly anything. And I get to Winter Rock and I have the very same steer that I had picked and hand chosen to take to the prison rodeo. I'm like going, all right, here's where it turns around. It's going to go a little better now. And that steer inexplicably kind of jumped to the right and then threw his head back to the left and actually stuck his horn right in my ear as an example of how bad it had went that entire year. And so the year goes on. Of course, then it's 2001. 9/11 is during Pendleton, and so the planes hit the towers, and we're all separated from our family. All of us are out there rodeoing, and all of us are just. It's heavy, and we can't travel, and everything is just. There's even a question whether they're going to continue to do the rodeos, and the whole thing is going on like that. And I was ready to go home. I'm like, I'm a long ways from making the NFR. It just seems like, why am I even doing this? It's like practicing bleeding. Who needs it? But at that, I went to church service that night. A lot of us showed up, went to a church service that night, and I'm in the middle of trying to decide whether to go home or not. And the preacher that's up there talking, he literally gets stuck saying, man, sometimes you just got to continue. You just got to continue. I don't even know how to say this, but you just got to continue. You just got to keep going. You just got to continue. And he just got stuck in this loop for what felt like an eternity. And finally I just said to the Father, all right, I get it. I'm supposed to keep going. And then as soon as I said that, the guy just took off and said the rest of the things he was going to say. So I stayed hooked, and it didn't look like I was so far out of the top 15. I actually was back then, the year didn't get over till the end of October. Now it gets over the 1st of October. So we were at Oklahoma City, and there's 2 weeks left of the season. And I'm like 25th, maybe 3 weeks left in the season. I'm like 25th in the world standings, long ways out. and I'm watching Curtis Cassidy's good horse Willie go there at Oklahoma City. And of course, at that time, nobody had ever ridden Willie at NFR. And I watched him go, and I was like, man, I would love to ride that horse in Vegas. I think he'd be great out there. And when I said that, I felt like in my spirit, I felt like that the father said, well, go ask him if you can ride. And of course, Curtis was making the finals at that time. It didn't look like I had any chance. So I had to go kind of swallow my pride and go up to Curtis and say, hey, I know it's not very likely that I'll make the finals, but if I make it, is there any chance I could ride Willie out there? And of course he said I could. Well, then the next 3 weeks of the season go, and I pretty much entered everything I went to, I won first at, and ended up making the finals in 14th position. And actually one of the guys I knocked out right there at the end was Curtis. And I had to ask him if I could still ride Willie at the NFR. And of course, then Willie turns around, ends up being a Hall of Fame horse. I win the world on him, and they win the world on him 2 more times after that. So,
were you riding Willie when you made that run there in the fall? Or were you riding?
I wasn't. I actually rode him only at one of those places. I rode him at the Nile up in Billings. It was the only rodeo I was able to ride Willie at. That was the first time I'd ever ridden him was at the Nile, and I'd already asked to ride him at the NFR. But I rode him at the Nile up there, and I rode my horse at all the rest of the rodeos. I rode him at the shootout that they used to have in Dallas, and I rode my horse at the Cow Palace. And anyway, between all those rodeos, I ended up making the final. So
you had a great fall riding your horse, but still you had enough confidence in Willie that you got off your horse, which you've been winning on, and got on Willie. That took probably some guts, didn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was, some conviction anyway.
Right. Took something.
Did you get to run any practice steers on him before the NFR?
No, sir. I showed up there, and everybody kind of thought I was crazy because, nobody had ever ridden him there. But that year there were 5 guys riding Scooter, that great horse of Jimmy Powers's, and halfway through the NFR, my brother got off of his horse and started riding Willie, and we ended up with 1.5 NFRs. We ended up winning more on Willie than they won on the 5 guys riding Scooter one on him. So
I remember a victory lap that year. Tell us what happened.
Well, so my brother and I are winning the round, and there's one guy left. And of course, at that point in time, they already have you mounted up on the victory lap horse. The very last guy is Chad Beastmeyer goes, and he ties us. He doesn't beat us. He ties us. So there's going to be 3 of us on the victory lap, and he walks out, and I felt bad for not letting him. I'd already taken a victory lap that week, and so I stepped off and put him on there on the first horse. They only have 2 victory lap horses, and Cash is like going, here, jump on behind me. So I just jumped on behind Cash. Well, then, of course, the horse starts bucking all the way down the side of the deal, and my brother's not helping. He's hat whipping this horse the whole time. And I'm behind the seat, it's not a great place to be. And don't let anybody kid you. I stepped off of that horse. It's clear in the replay. All right.
Oh.
But anyway, at the back end, I swung a leg over, and it was quite comical. So.
Right. I remember that. Pretty cool. Well, after that, you went to the Olympics. Tell us what that whole experience was like. Well,
it's quite an opportunity, to get to compete in that environment, in that the Olympics were Salt Lake City that year, and it was just the U.S. versus Canada. It was just an exhibition sport for the Olympics, but exhibition medals are still cool, and we got to compete at it. I was able to actually won the first round and come back 1 second in the second round, and then they have a shootout round in the 8, and I won it, and then I had the top 4, and I won it, and ended up winning the gold medal. So,
who are you going up against, Rope?
Brian Fields, Bob Loomis. The Canadians were Mark Roy, world champion Mark Roy, and I think there was I think it was Brad Gleason was the other guy from the United States. There's like five Americans and 5 Canadians. I was trying to think who all the Canadians were. Blaine Peterson was world champion. Todd Bogus was another guy from up there. I can't remember all 10 of us, but anyway, that's what it was. It was all those guys.
Did you guys get to go out with them in the opening ceremonies?
We didn't get to do the opening ceremonies, which would have been really, really cool. But we got to go watch some of the other sports. We got to watch the speed skate, and we got to watch some stuff like that. Some guys went and we watched hockey, and we got to be a part of that. And it was like the president of the IOC at the time. He was there. He came to the event. Anyways, it was cool to get to be a part of it. So.
I imagine that's pretty special.
Yeah.
What about the jousting show? Was it American Jouster or crud? I don't remember the exact name of it.
Full Metal Jousting. It was on the History Channel.
Oh yeah. Well, I tuned in every week for it. Me and my wife both did, just because we knew you. We were rooting for you every week.
Yeah, that was kind of a crazy thing. You never know where God's going to lead your feet if you just give them to him. But we were actually headed to the National High School Finals National Junior High Finals in Gallup, New Mexico one year with my son, and my wife was over there she was doing some work on her computer, and she'd gotten an email in that said that about it, saying, hey, athletic men who want to challenge and, they ride horses. There's a reality show, and we didn't know what it was at the time. Full Metal Jousting. We didn't know what it was. And she was just joking around and sent in my name as a possibility for the show or whatever. She filled out the application, and we were just joking around about it. I mean, you got a long ways to drive between, Van, Texas and Gallup, New Mexico. And we get to Gallup, we're there for a day and a half, and I get a phone call, and this lady's on the phone. This is so-and-so from the History Channel. Like to talk to you about your application for Full Metal Jousting. And I'm like, oh, okay. We do the interview over the phone and still kind of don't think anything about it. And then they call me back and send me and ask me to send in a video. And so we just take a little video camera out there and shoot a little, 5-minute video, or not even that, just a 2-minute video, just kind of introduce myself and riding the horse around. And we put a couple of video of steer wrestling runs on there, and we send it to them. And still kind of don't think much of it. And then they call me back and say, hey, we want to fly you to LA. And so this time we're like going, okay, we need to figure out what this is. And so all they had was the promo. We didn't even know what this stuff. I didn't have any idea what it was about or anything like that. And so then they invite us to we go to Jackson, Mississippi, and they go for each one. Had like 30 guys. They did MRIs on us to make sure we were healthy enough to do it, and then we interviewed us in LA, and they bring us out there, and they kind of trained us for a week. Not really trained. They mostly did it to kind of see who would be able to be a part of it. Anyway, out of that, they picked the 12 guys for the show, or I guess there's a few more than that, whatever, 16 guys for the show. And then I'm on the show 38 days later. I come out with $25,000 and I didn't do as good as I'd like to have done, but it was a lot of fun doing it. The thing is the show kind of didn't have the best part of the jousting because of all the television parts of it. You know what I mean? Right. We actually went from there to he took the 8 guys from the show that he thought was the best, the guy that put it on, that was the kind of the Hank Shane, the main guy. He took us to Madison, Wisconsin, for the Madison Horse Fair, and we did a full competition at the horse fair. It was 8 guys, just a tournament the first day and a tournament the second day, and it was crazy how much better we could do than we did on the show. Because with the show, what was happening was, like, you couldn't tell, but like they had all these cameras, and one of them was like on a wire, like you see at the football games, and it was right over the tops of your heads, like, you know, about 10 foot above your head, and that thing would go zipping across there. You go right up behind them, and them horses they hated it, you know. And so them horses weren't acting right. And then all the thing was that the normal list, you can't see through the list, like that's normally a solid wall there. And so the horses can't see each other as well. So they don't duck over from each other when you get to that point of contact. So in the practice list, it was like that. So we were just breaking sticks like crazy in the practices. And then we'd go to the final deal, and we wouldn't do near as good. We wouldn't be near as many on horses and that kind of stuff. So when we were out there promoting the show, we had the big one up there, and I won both days on it. Beat both the guy that won first and the guy that won second on it. So I wished I could have produced a little more than I did, you know. But my jousting career is officially over. My last time, I hadn't done it in a long time, and they had a fundraiser for this horse farm that does stuff for PTSD for veterans and stuff that come back from at that time Afghanistan, and they were, you know, and this horse place would, you know, basically use the horses as a therapeutic riding place to get people over that. So it was about 6 or 8 guys from the show, and we did a show, like a show as a fundraiser for that place. Well, anyway, me and the guy that won second in the competition, we met the last day and the last match and for the championship. And the very first pass, he unhorses me and I unhorse him. I hit the ground, and of course I didn't know. You don't really know if you've unhorsed them. You just know you hit them really, really hard, you know. And I hit the ground, and as soon as I hit the ground, I could tell I dislocated my right shoulder. And so I'm laying on the ground, and the guy walks up, and I'm saying, you know, your squire or whatever walks up, and I'm like, hey, help me up. My shoulder's dislocated. And he goes, no, I can't help you up. He says, if you can stand up, you're the winner. And I was like, what do you mean? He says, he's knocked out. If you stand up, you're the champ. So I get to my feet with my shoulder dislocated, and I win the competition. And anyway, that was the end of my jousting career. So
You had a great career, except for the TV show. Dang it!
Right.
Yeah, I would have lost the farm on that deal, Jimbo. I thought, well, Rope's got this deal. He's the only one of the guys that could even ride a horse out of the deal, it looked like. And I'll be dang, they got him. That jousting has to be a humbling sport, about like bulldogging is sometimes.
Yeah, it was a little tough, you know. That match I lost was a bummer, because I was winning it, and then my shield broke, and then I let myself get rattled. So that's always a reminder to keep your head in the middle of the moment. So
yeah, it looked like the host, he was even picking Rope to win the whole thing, you know.
Right. Well, he had to be the betting favorite.
He had to be.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of
Rope, when you retired, was it hard to do? Or were you ready?
I mean, not really. I mean, there's parts of it. I mean, there's parts of the competition that, you know, everybody, it's hard to, there's part of you that cuts their teeth on competition. It's hard to lay that down, you know. But as far as the rest of it goes, I mean, I didn't like being away from my kids, and you know, I had such a great opportunity when the time came. I just felt like God had just ordained it. It felt like the right thing to do. You know, I had, for the last probably 7 or 8 years of my career, I I was given a tithe of my year to do rodeo camps around the country. We'd do one in Idaho, we'd do one in Western Oklahoma, we'd do one in Colorado, we'd do one in South Texas, and I would go do those camps around the country, and I'd always tell my wife, I was like, oh man, I just wish there was some way we could do this right where we live, you know? And she at the time was like, going, hey, we don't have the infrastructure, the people, the place, you know, we just can't do it, you know? And I was my wife, you know, she sings beautifully. If you've heard her sing, I always tell people she can really sing, and then they hear her sing and they come back to me and they say, hey, your wife can really sing. And I'm like, I told you that right at the beginning. You didn't believe me, or what's the deal here, you know? And but she can really sing, and she was singing at an FCA event in Tyler, Texas, and some people saw her there and got to talking to her, invited her out to Sky Ranch. And when she was at Sky Ranch, Sky Ranch, by the way, is in our town. I lived in Van, Texas for a lot of years and thought Sky Ranch was, you know, like a home for wayward boys. Didn't even know what it was. And everybody always asked me, how did you end up in Van, Texas? And I you know, always had this kind of weird answer about, well, I was just driving around trying to look for places, and I went through multiple different cities, tried to start out in Athens, and I just kept looking and ended up finding this place in Van. Well, anyway, they talked to her and they invited me out, and pretty soon we had a conversation with them, and they, you know, they do camps for kids, and they found out I did rodeo camps, and they had never even heard of such a thing. And so they invited us out. They asked us if we'd come and talk to them about it. And so we came out, and we left there going, I think we work here now. Mm-hmm. And that was in 2004. And then in November of that year, right before the NFR, the last year I made the finals, they invited me to come on, and the rest is history. We've been doing rodeo camps there for now 19 years. We this year we had, just in the summertime, we had 215 kiddos out for teach them how to rope and tie goats and run barrels and poles, and of course we have our clinics throughout the year. We have all throughout the fall and the spring. We have rodeo. We have breakaway clinics and tie down clinics and steer wrestling clinics. And we have our elite clinic in December where we invite kids that have all made the national high school finals or the Texas high school finals, and we bring them in and talk to them about how to really take their rodeo to the next level. We teach them about how to take care of their finances, how to market themselves, how to be successful at college and at the next phases of their life. And at the same time, we get to share the gospel. We get to tell them about the love and care in Jesus Christ and the way that He can change their lives and not just help them to be successful when they nod their head, but be successful in their marriages and in raising their own kids and having their own jobs and their own careers. And so we've been blessed to be able to do that for now, like I say, 19 years. So go where God takes you.
That has to be rewarding to be able to do that, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's, you know, everything I did in rodeo was fun. It was awesome, but it was nothing compared to the life I've got to live outside of it and after it.
Rope, I'm going to put you on the spot here just a minute. If you were making a Mount Rushmore of bulldoggers, who would you put on it? 4 names.
4 names.
All time. You know, it doesn't have to be guys.
All time.
Yeah.
I get it.
Just whatever you think.
Well, I mean, I'd probably put Luke and Oakberry. Well, I probably wouldn't put Oat. I'd probably put Luke and Roy Duval for sure. Those 2. I would put my dad on there, not because of what he's won, but because of the innovation that he's brought to the sport and the sheer volume of guys that he taught. You know, there was times at the NFR where there was 8 or 9 guys at the NFR that my dad had coached and instructed, which is pretty amazing. And then the final one would be John W. Jones. So.
Wow. Pretty good list, Cody.
That's hard to beat right there.
Right. And you didn't stutter either. You know, a lot of times we throw those questions out there, and everybody can come up with the first 2 or 3, but they have trouble with the 4th one. And you just spit it right out. So
I thought he
good.
might have put Jim Bynum on there. I'm not sure.
Yeah. You only got 4 spots.
I know
Yeah,
that
you only
Oat's
get
hard
4.
to leave off there too. Holy moly, that guy.
Yeah, it's hard to leave off Oat, and I realize I might be a little bit prejudiced with my dad being on there, but I think the body of work kind of holds up when you start to look at the people that it's kind of like a coaching tree in the NFL. You know what I'm saying? It's the guys that have come through that. You know?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, look at the family he produced.
Yeah.
Himself, world champion. You're a world champion.
Yeah.
Cash, world class. Your sister, world class. Roper.
Rope, what do you think about the Bulldoggers today and what's going on?
Well, there's a couple things that are happening in Sturgis, and I think first of all, let me just start off by saying that, I think there's a lot of really, really talented guys. I mean, Wags is really, really handy, and I think he bulldogs really, really good, and I mean he's worthy of some guys that probably put him on the list, and I wouldn't argue too hardly about that. I do think that one of the things that's happened in kind of with the way it's a little bit of the way things is gone. It's become more of a go around kind of thing. It's one shot.
Sure.
So much. And the guy that was able to be consistent is not necessarily successful. That's why it kind of gets to the NFR, and Wags being one of the very few of those guys that knows how to stay consistent ends up winning world titles, when a lot of those guys will make a great run and then not make a good run, and then make a great run and then not make a good run. And it's kind of the way it's become, it's with a lot of these shootouts and a lot of things like that, and a lot of the big money won in those type of situations. The value of being consistent is kind of lost its value, so to speak. And so I think that's part of what you see in steer wrestling right now, where you see guys that look amazing for 4 or 5 rounds at the NFR and then just fall apart. And it's because they just have been going at it, and I appreciate that. I understand it. It's just it's the world we're living in, and it's the way they're going about it, right now. So that's I don't really think that's a negative.
No.
A negative on the steer wrestlers themselves. I think it's just it's the game that's being played right now. Right. So you got to play it the way it's being played. So.
Right, for sure.
They're probably the tightest group of guys in rodeo, Jimbo. Here a few years ago, they decided they didn't love what was going on at Cheyenne, and they boycotted it. They only got 26 steer wrestlers at Cheyenne that year. So that tells you something that the Bulldoggers are a pretty tight group, and they pretty well see eye to eye, and I like to see that in a group of guys, I guess, Jimbo.
Absolutely.
Well, Rope, we sure appreciate you coming on today.
Well, I enjoyed it. Enjoyed talking with y'all. I hope I didn't wear your ears out too much.
No, you were great, and we appreciate your career, and we really appreciate what you're doing now in the ministry and with helping the kids and stuff. That's great.
Yeah, that's the best thing we can do, Jimbo.
Absolutely.
Well, that's the way I see it. I feel like that you guys are doing the same thing out there. You're making sure that others hear about the World Rodeo and continue to inspire others to pursue it.
Well, thank you, Rope. We appreciate that. You ever get up our way, come see us now.
We'll do that.
All right, everybody. This is Cowboy of the Osage podcast. We'll see you next week. Thank you, Rope.
Thanks, Rope.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Old stories like long lost friends, rodeos and late night bends, history before our time, round pens and pasture rides, cowboys of the Osage.